Today on the PitchBook Podcast, we have Nate Thompson as a relief pitcher, pitching leadership and self-deception by the Arbinger Institute. Batter up! Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have probably one of the smartest, most compassionate, and truly handsomest men I've ever been associated with. This is the kind of guy who would rescue you from a burning building, give you the shirt off his back, and then say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got to run. I just found a robin who broke her wing. I got to fix it real quick." Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Thompson, thank you for being our relief pitcher. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Nate is the man. We're really excited to have you on here. Zach, you mentioned, well, before we get started, let's Nate, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living. You picked a book that probably relates to what you do for a living. So why don't you tell us just a little bit of your background for those that don't know you?
A little bit about my background. I grew up in Utah, got involved in construction and development at an early age. And then as I got a little bit older, decided to kind of pivot from that and get into commercial real estate. And so for the last about 20 years, I've been doing commercial property management, leasing, TI construction. So that's kind of my background now and my expertise, and the company that I own focuses on commercial management as well as multifamily.
Awesome. What so how many people, when you're a leader, right? How many people do work for you, or what's the scoop?
So our organization has about 50 employees now, and
Awesome.
30 of those came last year. So it's our
So
company.
no big deal. Yeah, just
Yeah,
easy,
no big deal.
easy 30.
So we're really starting to scale and grow, and we've figured out a really cool model, and we're starting to attract the right people, the right clients, and so that's just kind of fueling our growth, and it's kind of an exciting time. The name of our company is Mecca, and so we're super pumped about it and excited to kind of see what the next few years bring. So
Awesome. Zach, you want to chime in, ask a question, or you just want to be a pretty face? What's the scoop?
Yeah, well, I didn't know if you were talking about me or Nate on that intro there. That was
Well,
pretty heavy. No,
he was definitely talking about you, Zach. Definitely not me.
So. Nate is the real deal. He is the package. Anybody that knows Nate, he's just a great guy, a great human being, and it's been fun over the years. We've known each other for, gosh, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, and it's been fun to see the growth within your company, to go from a small organization to something that's starting to just build like a giant snowball.
Yeah.
What does a good client look like for you? What type of clients are you guys after? How are you growing? Are you acquiring business or just naturally finding it?
We're kind of naturally finding these clients. They're coming through just a network of the people that these relationships that we've kind of built in the community. And we always kind of refer to Utah as kind of like small lake city. Like everybody knows everybody, but now they're getting to know us as Mecca. And so we're starting to really connect with the brokerage community. Kind of the major players are really starting to get to know who we are. And so because of our reputation and just the service and our people focus. So we're really focused on trying to create a unique like tenant and resident experience at the properties that we manage. And obviously our clients get a benefit from that. And so because of that, those relationships that we've been sowing and creating over the last few years, a lot of the pipeline of new business that's coming is coming through those relationships and kind of that reputation that we've created.
So as you're building, how do you keep your culture? I found when you're in growth mode, you mentioned before we started the podcast today that you used to know everybody really intimately in the company, what's going on with their kids, sports they're playing, and as you just get bigger, it's harder to do that. And so it's
It is.
keeping that same culture, that same mindset. How do you help that persist as you guys grow?
Um, I've always heard that once you break the 50 or 60 employee, that level, you start to kind of lose the culture. I'm bound and determined not to allow that to happen. And so I think for us, it's every new employee that comes in, we really try to make sure that they understand our values and what is most important to us, and kind of our code of conduct is what I call it. And it's like what I'm passionate about, and I think if you were to come and visit the company and talk to people, is like creating that Disneyland experience for tenants or residents. It's like every little touch point is methodically kind of planned out, and that, I mean, it starts with like a smile from our maintenance guys to how we answer the phone. It's these little things that we do add up to these big things, that can just create an overall experience, positive experience for the tenants or residents. And so I think it's just it is so important to just provide the training, and then it's a weekly, a daily follow-up to just ensure that these employees understand the importance, and then they're incentivized to do that. And like for me, I've started to realize when you start to hire people of that, like you start to hire, you know, um just mass amounts of people, which is what we kind of experienced last year. You really start to figure out what you're looking for. And for me and the team, we really figured out that we're looking for individuals that have like a servant heart. That gives me
Mhm.
what I need. And then the skill set, the rest of it, I can kind of teach them. And so you're kind of looking for these key things. And once they have that, that's, as we call it, the magic. The rest of it can come through training and mentoring and those types of things. And you just got to be diligent in it. You got to do it. If you say you're doing it, you got to do it. So
I love it. I love it. So about this book, Leadership and Self-Deception. First of all, I think it's hilarious that it's written by an institute, the
mhm.
Arbinger Institute. Is that right?
Yes,
Um,
that is correct.
that just kind of makes me laugh, right? Like, we shall write this book together. Like, it just sounds very, very formal. So I'm excited to hear about it. And the funny thing is, we quick story about this book. I know I think I've read this book, part of it. I can't remember truly. So I'm gonna have to, once you talk about it, I'll see if my memory kind of dusts off a little bit. But Zach has a funny story about this book that we told off air that is probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, it's been probably a decade. Matt lent me some sales books. I was just, I'm always open to reading whatever, and Matt always has good picks. And this book was in that stack. It's a pretty easy read. Would you agree, Nate? It's not a
Yeah,
difficult read. It's like a storyline,
there's a storyline for sure.
and it's easy to comprehend the concept. So I blasted through the book, and I still have the book. So I owe Matt a book
What
back.
the
I
funny part
know.
about it is I have no idea. I had no recollection of lending this book to you,
Now
but
I wish I wouldn't
it's
have brought it up because you totally forgot that I took your book. I'll get it back to you.
no,
It's
and I was
having on the
yeah.
shelf.
And off air, I was telling these guys just my philosophy is if you're gonna lend something to somebody, just don't expect to see it back, and you won't be disappointed, right?
That's right.
Or just like me, you just forget about it. Like I used to have a Maserati. What happened to that? I can't remember. All right, Nate. So tell us what we like to know is how did you find this book? And like what's the story behind you even picking this book up to read it?
So a few years back, I was really struggling with my youngest child, who's a boy, and his name's Cooper. And I was struggling to connect to him, and everything, all the expectations I had for that kid, he would do the exact opposite. He was like oppositionally defiant, like, and I just got to a point where I was so frustrated and just didn't know how to like have a positive experience with him. It just felt like it was always a battle with him. And so my wife and I, we were kind of just scratching our heads trying to figure it out. And I had this really good friend, and him and we meet probably once or twice a month and have lunch. And he's about 10 years ahead of me down the road, and has an amazing company and has just been a really cool like mentor to me. And so we'd get together and have all sorts of different types of discussions. And I had expressed my frustrations to him quite a few times. And he's several years older than me and has a lot of wisdom. And he didn't share this with me, but he had gone through something similar with his son, and his son Riley had gotten to a point in his life where he graduated high school and kind of gone off and done some things. And in his growing up years, they had a lot of contention and friction. And so he had some great insight to that. And we were having lunch, and I was explaining again the challenges I was having with my son. And all of a sudden I looked at him and I said, Sam, I'm like, am I the problem? And he's like, Nate, yeah, you're the problem. And he goes, this is why you're the problem. And he says, I want you to read this book. And so he gave me Leadership and Self-Deception. And I mean, he'd been hearing me talk about this for months, and he'd never said a peep about this book. But when I got to the point where I was like, Sam, am I the problem? Like, is there something I'm doing that's not working here that's maybe adding to this? And he said, yeah, Nate, he just held up the mirror and said, yeah, you're the problem, and you need to read this book and you'll figure it out. And so he gave it to me, and I just devoured it. And it, like Zach said, it's very easy read. It's a storyline. That's what I really liked about it. It's very personal. Like, you can glean what you need to glean out of it. And so I walked away after reading that book, realizing that I was the problem. And I came away with some tangible tools to kind of help me navigate that. And not only did it help me with that relationship, but it helped me with the relationship with my wife, my other two kids. And then that just translated into work and other relationships in my life. And so it became something very near and dear to me, and just helped me just become a better man, a better human, a better friend, a better spouse, better husband, father, all of that. So
Zach, that's why I gave you the book, because I'm not the problem at all. So I didn't need it. I was like, this is fine.
I see the
I'm good.
strategy
Zach,
now.
you're the
Yeah.
problem. No, I love
am
it.
the problem.
I'm actually excited now to remember, see if I remember reading this book. I obviously didn't take much from it. All right, Nate. So it's a story. Tell us a little bit about it, and I mean, walk us through the book. Pitch the book to us.
And Matt, you probably didn't need to take anything from it, man, because I know you, and you're such a good dude. Like,
well, I don't mean to brag,
you're,
but
you're probably not dealing with the stuff that I was dealing
yeah,
with, you know.
I don't know
So,
about that.
but
We'll chat off camera.
yeah.
All
Well,
right, go ahead.
tell you a little bit about the book. It's a parable, a story about a company named Zagram. And there's an individual, Tom Callum, who is kind of promoted to a senior manager within the organization. And they just talk about some of the backstory to this guy. He'd been struggling with team members, and he's struggling at home. And it just kind of talks about just his self-deception, self-betrayal, and ultimately it talks about this concept when we betray how we feel we should act with individuals or how we should help others. We put ourselves in a box. And so the story just basically talks about this box and what it's made up of and what happens when we go in the box, and then what we need to do to get out of the box. And ultimately, it's a story that just talks about kind of the inward versus outward mindset, and just the nuances of both of those, and the challenges that come with having that inward, mindset and versus kind of the outward mindset. So in a
Okay, so
nutshell, that's kind of the gist of the book. If And if you want, I can maybe kind of go into just some like the personal side of it versus the business side.
Well, tell me more. I'm trying to remember slash understand. You mentioned when you're deceiving yourself, and that's when you're getting in the box. How are you supposed to? I guess, is there an example, or how am I'm trying to grasp what exactly that means.
Yeah. So maybe just an example. The other night I come home, I'm tired. It's been a long day. Had some challenges at work. Come home, I'm having dinner. My wife's made dinner. And then when I'm done with dinner, it's like, hey, I I'd like to just go watch a show and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of veg out and disconnect. But inside I have this feeling, hey, you need to go help your wife with the dishes. And I've got two options in that scenario. I can follow that impression and go help my wife with the dishes, which would be kind of that outward mindset, where I focus on her needs above my own, or I turn inward and focus on my own needs. And then I basically betray that feeling and go against that. And when I do that, you basically go into the box. And so when it's basically, am I going to be selfish or am I going to stay focused on the needs of my spouse in that case? So in any given scenario, depending on who you're interacting with, we will have impressions, feelings to do stuff for other people. And we can either follow those impressions and stay out of the box, or if we decide to deny those feelings and turn inward and it kind of becomes selfish, then we go inside the box. And when we do that, we start to view others as objects. They're no longer people to us. They're objects to be acted upon to, do whatever selfish desires that we have to help us accomplish that. And so it becomes a challenge in our lives as we decide to stay, self-focused and not outward focused and kind of follow those feelings to help others.
Okay, so that
So
that
did
makes
you
sense.
do
Oh, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
did you do the dishes or watch the show? You got to finish the story.
I I for many years did not do the dishes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and now I'm trying to become a better man.
Yeah. Just being
Um,
aware.
but
Yeah,
And
that's
really,
the other thing. You have to be aware that you're even
you
being
do.
selfish.
Yeah. And that's what I love about this book is it kind of opens up your mind to that. And I was very unaware of a lot of that stuff. And once I read it, like the blindfold came off. I could no longer not see it. I started to see it everywhere.
Mhm.
So, and it it was a challenge for me because I thought I was an outward focused person, like focused on others and helping them and meeting their needs. And I realized with some of like the most important people in my life, I was more selfish and kind of focused on myself. So
And it
Zach,
seems like
yeah, go ahead, Zach.
well, it seems like the long-term benefits from being outward focused, you're now doing dishes, you're noticing the laundry, you're making the bed after you get out in the morning. The long-term game here that you're playing in all of these relationships, it seems like with your spouse, with your kids, they just are feeling like they're being helped out, like you're looking out for their best interest.
yep.
And in those long-term games and those relationships, they start to bring it back to you to help you out when you're, maybe one day you come home, it's like, I got the dishes, you're good, go relax.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you've noticed?
It's true. Like I found that the more outward focused I stay, I end up getting my needs met much better than me
Right.
turning inward and trying to be selfish and trying to gain my needs that way. So it's interesting. It's kind of counterintuitive, but I found in my life, as I've stayed focused on others' needs and out of the box, it's often benefited me more than when I turned inward. So
Do you ever get frustrated? You kind of have had this realization, and you're looking at the world around you now from
yeah,
through a different lens. And do you look at others and think, man, they're so deep in the box and they're just never going to come out. I'm
yep.
just not going to spend the time with this person. Or is it just altruistic? You just help everybody, whether it works out or not. I
I mean,
guess. How do
I
you view
definitely
others?
can, I'm more observant now and can see people that are in the box. And then as I hear them talk, I really key into it, and then it's like, oh, I have this solution. Like I want to give you this book and I want to talk to you about it. But I've learned I've had some experiences with people that weren't ready to hear that, and they've just kind of put their hands up
Mm.
and the close the door and put up some kind of barrier between us. The experience I had with my friend that introduced me to the book just kind of taught me a valuable lesson that you're aware of it and you just wait for the right cues to know when to introduce it. And so within our organization at work, like we had the entire team read the book and we discussed it and figured out ways to implement it. And now we've got this whole new group of people that need to hear this message. And I think it's super important within organizations because if you don't, it leads to all sorts of different problems. You know, be, in the relationships within an organization. And so, um, yeah.
So I get the personal part of things that what you're talking about, but my little brain is having a hard time understanding because to me leadership is like influence, right? Leadership is influencing people to do the right things or what you consider the right things. So how does this work for actual leadership, or can you give us a business example?
Yeah. So imagine like you're at work and you're in a, meeting or you're working on a project and maybe you as an employee or as the leader, you have some valuable information or you've gained some kind of experience throughout your career that would allow you to help, individual team members gain some insights and help them within the team or on this particular project that you're working on. And let's say you decide to withhold that information. It's like, no, I've paid the price. I feel like I've gained that through, you know, through my hard work and efforts, and so because of that, I'm not going to share that information. I've
Mhm.
found that a lot in organizations where I've been on the receiving end of that. And I think in that scenario, once you deny, offering up that information, if that's the scenario you're in, you immediately start to view that other coworker, employee, that person's less than me. Like they're not as important as me, and they're not as hardworking. You kind of start to inflate your virtues, and therein lies the challenge. You could once you start to understand the concept, I mean, you could open your eyes up to a whole host of situations where this kind of plays out in organizations, and I'll often find where I'm coaching an employee and they've got hard feelings towards another employee. And once we get to the root of it, it's related to this concept where
Mm.
they've maybe felt an impression to do something for a fellow employee and they didn't follow that. And so because of that, they start to um, they've got to justify their behavior. And once that happens, they start to inflate their own virtues and they have to basically point out the faults of the other person. And it just creates this wedge between individuals and difficult to operate, to work together. So it can become really challenging once you have that kind of dynamic going on within an organization. So
You can see this playing out in sports too. When you hear about successful NBA teams, if you take the five best players, put them on a team, they're not likely to win a championship because it's all about them.
yeah,
And the teams that go the distance, maybe they'll have one star player, but the other players are all good at supporting each other. It's
yeah,
about team success and helping others do well and succeed. And
for
that's kind
sure.
of what I'm getting from your description here. So do you have all your team members, employees read the book, or you give them a copy, or how do you get this? Kind of comes back to that culture question, because you
Yeah.
could I've seen this deployed. One of the companies that I work with, they have, I don't know, maybe 300 employees, and it is like a core curriculum training
I
from
love that.
the owner all the way down to the end of the line.
Yeah.
They're manufacturing, and they've been very successful. It's a
For that
language that they all speak.
that book or a different book?
This book
Oh,
that we're
okay.
talking, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
So everyone reads the book, they understand it. It's a language. They
Yeah.
all speak in those terms,
I
about in the
love it.
box, out of the
That's
box.
amazing.
Their
We
little
haven't
team
gotten to that
trainings.
place yet. We do have like a book club, so we'll pick certain books based on whatever our theme or our goals are for the year. We'll kind of pick books and we'll have a book club within the organization and have meetings to kind of focus on that, but we haven't gotten to that level yet. So, but I love that. I think that could be super beneficial to our group for sure.
Love it. All right. So what else you want to, before you give us a rating, what other nuggets should we hear, or what else about the book is critical to know?
I think we've talked a lot about like how to get in the box and how that self-betrayal happens, meaning that we have a impression or feeling to help somebody else and we deny that, and we immediately start to inflate our own virtues and, hey, I'm holier than thou, or I'm better than this person, and it creates this wedge or this distance between us and that person. One of the more important parts of the book, once you kind of understand that, is how do you get out of the box. And so I think just maybe mentioning a few of those things to kind of help us get out of the box is super important. And the first one on the list is just seeing other people as people. Like, oh, this is a human that has needs and feelings and aspirations and goals and dreams just like I do. And so just like I've found that with my family, when I can view them, when I realize that I'm doing that I'm viewing them as an object, when I start to think about them as a person and think about their needs and their feelings, and all of a sudden, I'm coming right out of the box. I start to treat them differently. And then obviously just as I would encourage people to just become aware of those impressions and follow them. We have them every day and you just don't realize. I didn't realize until I read the book how many times a day I have these impressions to help others. And I found that as I've followed them, I found greater like purpose and joy and happiness in my life and seeing others reach their potential and receive those things that they need to be successful. And then I think another key to like getting out of the box is when we view other people is don't focus on the things they're doing wrong. Maybe in my experience, hold up the mirror and try to look at maybe the things that I'm doing that are maybe contributing or adding to this situation, and how can I fix myself? How can I show up better to this situation? Is a great way to kind of help you get out of the box. So those are some of the things that have been super helpful, and I feel like the book does a great job of kind of talking through those particular points. So I wanted to make sure I shared that. So
One of the things that we ask, which might be redundant at this point, is what have you applied to your life, and what do you want to apply? It sounds like you're already trying to apply this to your life.
yeah.
Is there anything? So this made me think of a random question, and you may not have an answer for it. So I'm throwing you a little curveball here. Is there anything that you found particularly difficult to apply or difficult to understand or appreciate?
Um, it's not rocket science, not difficult to understand. I think it's for me, it comes down to pride. Like I'll get in certain situations and I'll immediately go in the box and I my pride will get in the way and it'll cloud my vision.
Yeah.
And it's like a couple days. Like it's specifically with my spouse. Like it used to be like I'd go a couple weeks in the box with her.
Yeah.
And then I was realizing, oh my goodness. And then I'd have a conversation with her. I'd see her as a person, and then all of a sudden I'm out of the box and I'm getting better. Like um that time span between when it happens and when I get out of the box is getting shorter. But for me, I think one of my biggest challenges is being able to set aside my pride
Yeah.
and not get caught up in that. Because that definitely is a hurdle for me. So especially when I feel like I'm right, and that's what I felt like with my son. I felt like, hey, I'm raising him the right way. I'm doing the right things as a father, and we just continue to have friction and just we would battle it out just back and forth until I understood this concept. And so now I think it's just I got to get better at looking in the mirror quicker, which is hard. That's not an easy thing to do. So
So that totally reminds me of a fantastic book that Zach, I'm going to review, or I'm going to pitch one of these days. It's called How to Argue and Win Every Time, which you think
Did you?
that's like a bad, title. He actually specifically talks about arguing with your spouse, arguing with your kids. It's an attorney. He's from Wyoming, famous attorney named Jerry Spence. And it's I'll have to refresh my memory on that book, but I do remember him talking about arguing, quote unquote, arguing with your wife. And he kind of just talks about this concept of you're having a a frustrating conversation over where to go to dinner. She wants to go to Thai, you want pizza, whatever it is, right? And you're arguing over something so trivial as what the next dinner is. And he basically says, like, what if this is your last dinner together?
Oh,
Like you go to Thai, you go eat what she wants, because who cares, right? It doesn't matter.
yeah,
And then he says I think he ultimately says, like, the way to argue with your spouse is to lose, and that's how you win.
yeah,
So anyway, it's a great book. I'll have to refresh my memory and pitch it sometime. But that's what you just said. That's what it reminds me of. So
yeah. I love that. And like the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it talks about just nobody wins in an argument, and that
yeah,
I've started to implant that into my mind. Like Nate, nobody wins in an argument. Like it's better to just eat Thai with your spouse, right? Enjoy
yep.
that experience,
sure. And it
to
and it doesn't
battle it
mean
out.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that you just
So
roll over for everything,
for sure.
either. But
Yep.
anyway, I don't want to get too far into a different book. But all right. So what would you rate the book?
For me, it's a grand slam.
Okay.
So I think so many people can benefit. Obviously, Matt, you're not one of them, but there's so many others out there that need that book. And I constantly interact with people on a daily basis where I wanna share that book. So
Funny thing is, I literally just bought it on Audible. So while you were while you were talking,
love it.
so,
I'm
And
keeping your
there's
copy. I'm
that's
keeping your
right.
there's a
Yeah.
copy then.
couple follow-up books to that. There's The Anatomy of Peace, and
Oh,
then
okay. I've read
there's
that book.
another one that's called Outward Mindset. And so they're kind of a trilogy. Like I
Hmm.
read one after the other and they kind of build upon each other, and
Oh, cool.
they're all great, phenomenal books. So
Yeah, I've read The Anatomy of Peace, and my dad recommended that to me. That's a great book too. So awesome. So Grand Slam, we love it, Nate. This is amazing.
well,
Before you go, we really appreciate having you on. Nate, I don't know anything about commercial real estate, but I will say, if there's anybody that's listening to this that is in that world that needs some help with Mecca, they should definitely check out Mecca. I was, I was joking about her intro, kinda, but Nate is one of the best guys I know, truly. And if you guys need to chat with him about this kind of stuff, this is a guy that I trust 100%. So Nate, tell us a little more about Mecca, whatever you want to say, where people can find you, maybe on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, I don't know, whatever.
I love it. You can look us up as mechamanagement.com. It's our website. You could reach out to me personally at nate@mechapm.com. Call me 801-231-3115. That's my cell number. Happy
There you go.
to talk more about the book or insights there, or talk about commercial real estate, which is
I
something I'm super passionate about. So,
I hope
and
you get a call that just says, "Hey Nate, I want to talk to you about leadership and self-deception. Do you got a few minutes?"
I love it.
You would love
I
it.
would I would totally welcome that. So, and I appreciate you guys letting me be on the show and provide some insights to this amazing book. So,
Thanks, Nate. That
Awesome.
was a great pitch.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Everybody, check out mechamanagement.com and like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Share the PitchBook podcast with all your friends, all your enemies. Get out of the box and get out there and share it so that people can become better. All right. Appreciate it, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.